Good evening and welcome to Driver's Ed. We'll wait for people to show up and to sign in. So get out some paper, something to write with, and we'll dive right into our content for this evening, probably in the next minute or two. So once I see names start popping up, remember to sign in under the comment section on YouTube. And to also text me. I want you to text me that you are here. So on your phone. Hello, hello. And I do need people to remind me when I'm echoing or I'm cutting out. So we've got 17 eyeballs on YouTube, which is good. But I want to see those names coming up on the screen. Awesome. Hopefully everybody had a good day. I guess we're, 2-3 weeks away from finishing up at Oyster River online. My last class told me that June 5th is your last day. So press on. You're almost there. I know adding driver's ed on top of your regular day must be a little trying, a little stressful. But hopefully if you sign in, take good notes. I'm not going to try to overload you with homework. I think that you could see from reading chapter 1, it's not a hard read. It's kind of an overview, and with 10 questions, it shouldn't take you too long. Actually, a lot of you had it done within like 10-15 minutes after we signed off last night. So it's good to see people signing in. So remember, I also want you to do it on your phone too, texting me, because your text messages, and this is how I want you to send me your homework. So when I look at your name, I can actually scroll and see, okay, they did this homework, they didn't do this homework, they were here today, they didn't show up for a half hour. So signing in on your phone is just as important as signing in on the screen. Now, I am looking at my computer screen. It's easier for me to talk to the camera and look at who's here on the screen. And remember, I do want you to ask questions. Just remember there's going to be a delay, so it may be some time before I answer them. We are today going to have some questions throughout today's session that I want you to answer, and the reason why I want you to answer those questions, not only because I want to see what your point of view on driving is, but it also lets me know that you are still involved. Because one of the things, because this is not like Zoom, that I can't look at the screen and see if someone is still at their computer. So this is on the honor system, so I'm trusting you. Okay, you're all starting with that basic trust from a teacher. So thanks for signing in. And if you didn't hand in the homework, just get it into me tonight. I don't want to get it a week from now, but it's nice to have it all, in order so I can take a look at it real quick and check it off. I just make a little notch in my sheet indicating that, and this is pass-fail, so I'm just looking for the majority of the questions being correct. If there's anything blaring wrong, then of course I'm going to let you know about it. Today's topic, before we get into today's topic, let's just kind of go through yesterday's class, because it was just an introduction to driver's ed. So you know the rules. We've got a classroom, we've got observation, and we have driving to do. So at the end of the program, you'll have completed your classroom portion. Your parents are taking care of your observation. We have 2 college students. One of them texted me and wanted to know about observation. So if you're older than 18, it does not apply to you. So that applies to both UNH students. And we also talked about commentary driving, what your parents should expect from you when you're driving, and the same thing, how your parents can help you with that observation. So that's what we basically covered yesterday. Now, I only believe that one person, only one, and I've got to get better at names, took the quiz. Okay? Remember, you need to go on to Facebook, Toll Driving School. So let me throw this up here. This is what you're going on to. Okay? This is a look at the top. It says Toll Driving School. And if you look halfway down, it says, here's the link to join the private driver's education class. This is where I'm going to be putting links to quizzes and tests and PDFs for worksheets that we're going to do. So you have to come and you have to join, all right? Once I get your request, I accept you, and now you can get it. And this is what you're going to look for next. So once you join, this is what it's going to look like. Okay, this is our private group right here. This is the quiz that I want you to take. It's only, I believe, 25 questions. It's just an overview of things we're going to cover in class, but it gives me a basis of where your knowledge is on driving, okay? It will also give you an idea of what test questions will be in driver's ed. So this quiz, okay, needs to be done by tomorrow's class. And like I said, I think only one person is taking it because it's being sent to me. So once you take it, your test score will be sent to me. And the quizzes and the midterm final, of course, is more important than the homework. The homework is to give you extra credit, to boost you up to a passing grade in order to pass driver's ed. So make sure, if you haven't done the Facebook, joining that Facebook group, that you have to do that. I think everybody has texted me their name if you haven't done that. I know there are some of you that jumped in late to yesterday's class, and you said that you watched it. You didn't probably see it at the beginning, but I want you to text me in your name. That way I can put you in my contacts and I can keep track of the information that you're sending to me. So that takes care of all the busy work. Well, we dropped down to 13 people. Okay, we're losing. I don't know who's still here, but not good. Let's get right into the PDF. So today's talking about the highway transportation system. So write that down. I do want you to know that. And why is it important to understand the highway transportation system? So if you did your reading, it's basically give you an understanding of how things have progressed and where they're going to, what is going to happen once you get out on the road. We need to have a basic understanding that driving in rural New Hampshire is not the same as driving in Boston, Massachusetts. And even if you could get more further rural than you do in New Hampshire. So even though you're getting trained in this area, proximity, that your skill level has to take you to where you can drive wherever you want to drive, not only in this country, but in the world, because some of you will probably be traveling and studying abroad at some point. And having a basic understanding of driving skills and laws will help you well when you do go to other states or to other countries. And you're just going to have to pick up the nuances in those states and other countries to make sure that you're not breaking law. So think about it. If we didn't have any laws, what would driving be like? I mean, right now, driving is difficult. But if we ever get to the point where everybody gets to do whatever they want to do, and we're almost in that state right now with the virus, okay, some people want to be very, very strict to adhering to all the precautions of stay at home, all the coverings. Driving is almost the same way with our laws. Some people follow it right to the T, and other people take a look at our laws only as suggestions, and they want to do whatever they want to do. That doesn't mix. When you get out on the road and you get around these type of people, driving is going to be more complicated. So let's take a look at the history of the highway transportation system. So it's been around for about 100 years. Back in the early 1900s, there were only 23,000 vehicles and 17 million horses, so they definitely outweighed And I got this picture. This is actually a picture of New York City. And if you take a look at the picture, you got a car that's kind of making a turn, and you've got pedestrians that are crossing in front of the vehicle, but in front of the pedestrians is a horse in a cart. Now, what I want you to think about, even though we live in rural New Hampshire, that if you ever get a chance to go down to Portsmouth near Strawberry Bank and drive around some of those roads, you're going to think it's not like driving in Durham or Dover. Portsmouth is a much older town. So those roads were built for horse and carriage. They weren't built for cars. So when we got away from horses and got into automobiles, we just paved those horse paths over. Now, it makes it hard to travel in some of these areas because the roads are so narrow. And we'll talk more about that. So when it said there were only 150 miles of paved roads, when we first started to manufacture automobiles, we know that most of these roads were in metropolitan areas. We're thinking Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit. Once people were able to afford vehicles, and we started to see them coming into smaller towns and cities, then we had to build an infrastructure that would allow for cars to travel, because you didn't want to travel on dirt roads on your car all the time. So today we have 194 million drivers, 230 million registered vehicles traveling, 42 trillion miles, 150 miles of paved roads. So much more complex now than it was back then. To give you some idea, if you take a look at this picture right here, the name above used cars, that is my grandfather's dealership here in Rochester. Back in the 1940s, my grandfather opened up an Oldsmobile and GMC truck dealership. And I wrote down a few things that was passed along. Back when vehicles came up in this area, usually it was only one per family. There is no way that families could have a ton of money to have multiple vehicles. Think about what you have right now. How many of you, and what I want you to do in the comment box on YouTube, I want you to write down how many vehicles you have in your driveway right now. Okay, so everybody in the comment box, so it gives me a chance to see who's still here. I'll be able to go back after class and find out who is here 10, 15 minutes into class. So write down how many cars are in your driveway at this point. I will almost bet that most of you have at least two, if not more. Back then, you didn't take out a loan for a vehicle. It was usually paid in full. So you earned enough money until you could afford that vehicle, and then you bought it outright. It wasn't probably until the late 50s, early 60s that we saw savings banks and credit unions actually lending out money. And that's when you started to see more families branching out to 2, 3 cars. Back when I was in high school, back in the 70s, it was very rare for a high school student to have a vehicle. I would probably say half to less than half of the students had a vehicle. Everybody took the bus, everybody walked to school, or they carpooled with friends. But looking at Oyster River, and I know it's been a problem for years, at least the last 5, 6 years, is that your population at school is more than you have parking spaces. And just to put this little bug in your ear right now, if you haven't really been thinking about it already, think about, am I going to get a parking pass? Do I have a vehicle that I'm going to be able to use to go to school when they let us back in September? That is something that is going to be a concern of yours. See, back 20 years ago, that's not a concern. So the whole point of driving and learning to drive, there's a lot that goes into it. It's more than just the operation of the vehicle. It's thinking about, think about getting out of college and having a job, finding a place to park in Boston for where you're working, or if you're working in Portsmouth. Those are things that you have to start thinking about. So mainly vehicles were used for work and not for pleasure. Back in the 60s and 70s, when we started to go to 2, 3 car families, then you had families going on shorter trips for a vacation on a more regular basis. But back in the 40s, back when my grandfather had this dealership, you didn't take vacations every year. It may be every other year. And you couldn't always depend on your car getting you to long distances, like going from here to Florida. I mean, those cars weren't as reliable as the vehicles that we have right now. And the last thing that I want you to think about, we have so many options available to us right now when it comes to vehicles. We can basically buy an import. We could get a car from Europe and have it imported to the United States and get it registered here. But back in the 40s and 50s, you usually bought local. So if you wanted a Ford and your local area didn't have a Ford, you probably settled for something different. Maybe you bought a car that was your second or third choice. But we have so many options. Here's a sticker from the dealership from my grandfather. My dad gave me a lot of the pictures and paperwork from the dealership because it was here in Rochester. So back in 1969, you could buy a brand new car for under $3,500. And that's actually the vehicle that you see. This is a two-door. It's a coupe. But what this individual here bought was a four-door. And what I thought was kind of interesting is that power steering, $100. Okay. Wheel disc or your rims, your tires, $21, $31. I mean, that doesn't even get you an oil change nowadays. So owning a vehicle is much more expensive. And of course, it's relative to what we're earning. But we're always looking at the best possible ride, the safest car that we can get. So what I want you to write down in your notes, okay, so I do want you to write this down, is that your first priority when it's your choice to buy a vehicle should always be safety. You should always think about, is this car going to protect me in a crash? I know the way that it looks, the way that it performs, its reliability has a lot to do with safety too. But too many times we're thinking about, oh, I want a nice black car, nice rims, a good stereo system. I mean, those things are nice, but they should be a little bit further down on your want list. And talk about where we're going in this country. Look at that. A Tesla, okay? Base model. Okay, it's only been 50 years from that last car that I just showed you. 50 years. $3,500 for a brand new car. Okay, now granted, this is kind of a top of the line for electric car. $80,000, you could basically get the performance package, which is going to top it out at around a cool $100,000. But this vehicle does everything. Great on gas mileage, great on safety, great on technology. And I think this is where we're going. This is where the future is going to be. So there are always going to be some car companies that are going to be pushing the envelope to what the general public is going to have. So I would think in the next probably 15, 20 years, this is going to be an average vehicle. Probably not that much. The price will come down, probably closer to 40 to 50,000. But this is where we're headed. So the cars of tomorrow will probably be self-driving. So you're not going to have to do certain things in the vehicle. Now, we're not quite at that point. There's actually like 4 or 5 levels of autonomous vehicles. So they are out there. They're on the roads. They're being tested. We're using them in trucks. We're using them in taxis. So this is where we're going to. To give you some idea, this is what I found on the internet. So let's watch this.
This is Volvo's 360C concept car, and it's just one idea of what completely driverless cars might look like one day. That means cars without even a steering wheel that can safely navigate public roads entirely on their own. But with how much we hear about self-driving technology making its way into everyday cars, it's hard not to wonder, how much longer do we have to wait? Understanding just how far we've come with self-driving technology can be a bit tricky. To help define how sophisticated the automated technology actually is, the Society of Automotive Engineers classifies these systems using 5 levels. Level 1 is driver assistance, where the vehicle is able to control steering or braking, but not both simultaneously. Level 2 is partial automation, where the car can assist with both steering and braking simultaneously, but your attention is required on the road at all times. Both Tesla's Autopilot and General Motors' Super Cruise are examples of this. Level 3 is conditional automation, where certain circumstances allow the car to handle most aspects of driving, and the driver has the ability to temporarily take their eyes off the road. Level 4 is high automation, where, in the right conditions, the car can take full control, giving the driver a chance to focus on other tasks. And Level 5 is full automation. In this hypothetical situation, the car drives you, and there isn't even a steering wheel. So what level are we currently at? Most experts would agree, somewhere between levels 2 and 3. However, one of their biggest concerns is the public's misconception that we're much further along.
There's an incredible amount of confusion in the general public around the context of self-driving. In our survey data here, about 23% of respondents believe that a self-driving vehicle is available for purchase today. And a lot of that has to do with statements by Elon Musk and others talking about the driverless capabilities and the self-driving capabilities of vehicles. These are systems that are made to assist the driver under the supervision of a driver.
So, is it simply the limits of these automated systems that's holding us back? Actually, there are a number of other factors in the way. For starters, our roads. Simply put, many roads, especially in the United States, are too much of a mess to support cars that can drive by themselves.
So while many individuals out there are really working on the development of self-reliant automation, in essence, a robot that's fully capable of making its own decisions in today's infrastructure, the reality is today's infrastructure is not well equipped for autonomy. In essence, potholes, poor lane markings, and all the other crumbling aspects of our nation's infrastructure aren't going to support high-tech well.
In addition to more public roads needing signs and lane markings that self-driving cars can clearly make out, vehicles need to be wirelessly connected with that traffic infrastructure, as well as one another, in order to interact with the world around them flawlessly. Fortunately, automakers like Volvo already have technology that allows their cars to communicate with each other and alert drivers of hazards via a cloud-based network. This type of connected technology is being tested even further within driverless cars at M-City, a 32-acre mock city and testing facility at the University of Michigan.
So what are connected vehicles? When we say connected at M-City, we're really referring not to streaming Netflix into your passenger seat so much. That's a pretty solved problem in industry. But in how vehicles and infrastructure can be connected together for lots of other benefits like safety. The idea is a low latency way for vehicles to tell other vehicles and anything else that wants to listen where they are and where they're going.
So, once traffic infrastructure and communication is handled, what else do we need to address? Well, traffic laws. Governments have a number of important decisions to make in society's transition to self-driving vehicles. In the beginning stages, they'll have to define what weather conditions are appropriate for vehicles to be operating fully autonomously. This is due to the fact that many of these car systems can be disrupted by rain and snow. One industry they could look to for guidance is the airline industry, who doesn't hesitate to cancel flights in inclement weather. They'll also have to initially find a way for autonomous vehicles to safely navigate public roads amongst traditional cars. A possible solution could be designated lanes, similar to the high-occupancy vehicle lanes found on highways and bus lanes found in certain cities.
The government's kind of leaving it up to states to decide what's going on, just because the technology's so new and they still don't really understand what it's going to look like in the end. Once the government does fully involve the federal government, they're gonna have to speak to lobbyists, people that represent truck drivers and taxi commissions. They're gonna realize that a lot of jobs could be lost, and that's gonna be difficult. And then also liability. If these cars are on the roads and they're getting into accidents, like who is liable?
With all these things considered, back to our original question: how soon until we have self-driving cars?
I'd say within the decade, it's gonna be on highways, but if we're talking about being able to take your car wherever you want across the United States, being able to travel through New York City and sleep the whole time, I don't think we're anywhere close to that. Probably several decades away from that.
car makers and tech companies are very heavily focused on the context of driverless technologies. Now, I'm not saying that that's not the future. It is the future. But as many have begun to admit publicly, that future is further away than anybody's realistically considered to date. We as humans are really good at predicting the future. We're not so good at the timelines. And the timelines to driverless technologies changing how I live and move is probably in the order of several decades, if not further away.
How close are we to the Jetsons car? We're still a ways away, in my opinion. It isn't really a matter of when these technologies will arrive to me, but can we be ready and utilize them in the best way possible?
Okay, I thought that was pretty cool. I think they're a little bit off. I think we're closer than they mentioned. I do know that the Google car has gone cross country from Seattle over to New York, so I know we have made it all the way across. The biggest problem, write this down, with this autonomous vehicle is pedestrians. It does really well with technology, with traffic lights, GPS for intersections and turns, but it's still like pedestrians and animals, where people are doing things that are just not obvious, things that are very confusing. I think the computer is having a hard time figuring out human behavior that way. But seeing a speed of a car, position of a car, they're able to change what is happening in your autonomous vehicle so you're not involved in a crash. So what do we have in the United States? It is really the largest infrastructure of roadways. And all I want you to see here is that it costs a lot to build roads. The very last bullet here mentions that it was $25 billion that went into the interstate system. And we'll talk more about that next week when we talk about how does the interstate system work? How do they number the interstates, and what do I need to know about that? But that will be next week. But notice they thought it was only going to be $25 billion and take 12 years, but in actual cost, it was closer to $114 billion. And this is the thing that I can't believe, 35 years, 3 times, okay, when they expected it to be done. And what I want you to think about, because you're probably local, is that Portsmouth has the same problem with their bridges. They're still working on that bridge that goes from Newington into Dover. Now, this is the bridge that goes from Portsmouth to Kittery. It cost $181 million, but they still owe the contractor $5 million because it went over budget. And the thing that why this is important to you is that we pay taxes through registration, and we pay basically a road tax when we go through Easy Pass. So driving is going to be costly. Tomorrow's class will be all about titling and registration. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But just to let you know, there is no free ride when it comes to using roadways. They're going to have you pay one way or the other. Now, this I do want you to write down. Why is it important to have a basic understanding of the interstate system? One, it helps you get to where you want to go quickly, and it saves fuel. Okay, you don't want to waste fuel. I mean, we are going towards green vehicles. Most of those autonomous vehicles will probably have a hybrid battery. I mean, we are going that way. And by the way, you'll see this tomorrow in class. Oh, actually, the license and registration is not tomorrow. We've got knowing your vehicle tomorrow. Well, anyways, the driver's ed vehicle is a hybrid. So you'll see that tomorrow. I absolutely love my hybrid. It's been very dependable. I don't think I'd ever buy another car that wasn't a hybrid for driver's ed. It's been the best thing that I've done probably in the last 8 years. And I hope that when you do get to drive it, that it won't be like your home car, but I hope that you get accustomed to it and enjoy driving it. So there are 3 parts to the HTS if you did your reading. So let's go through the 3 parts. So what I want you to write down is people. I want you to have a basic understanding that once you get behind the wheel of the car, there are many people that are going to be using that same part of the pavement as you. A lot of times when we think about driving, we think about the earliest driving age, which is 15 and a half when you can legally start driving with your parents. And then for full licensure is at 16. But as a driver, you have to think about the young kid on a bicycle. You've got to think about the old person in their 80s and 90s that don't want to give up their license, and they're not that skilled anymore. They don't turn their head. They don't use their mirrors. They don't go the speed limit. You're going to have to interact with that young person that's chasing a ball out into the roadway. You're going to have to relate to that person that's elderly, that's pulling very slowly out from the intersection as you're coming on a green light. How are you going to deal with that person? So in your notes, put down, you have to be concerned from the time they can walk. So roughly around 2 to 3. I mean, that young you have to worry about, because there's no guarantee in a parking lot that a young child, 2 or 3, couldn't run out behind the vehicle and cause you a problem as you're looking for your parking space. And as we mentioned, you can drive legally in New Hampshire until the state takes your driving license away. So you could drive well into your 90s. I had a great uncle that drove till he was 95. My mother's 82, and she drove for the first time Saturday in over a year, and it petrified me. She probably shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car. Hopefully my dad and my mom aren't watching my videos anymore. There comes a time when people shouldn't be driving because of physical skills and mental skills. And the funny thing, and you probably haven't thought about this because you're new at driving, how many of you, I want you to put this in your comments, okay, because we did this, how many cars you've got. So let me see who's still listening. So in your comments, write down yes or no. When driving with your grandparents, do they make you nervous? Write down yes or no. Okay, so I want to see who's still listening. But I think most of you, if we were in class where we could actually talk about it a little bit, that your grandparents have probably done some things that you are thinking, I could actually drive right now, not being a licensed driver, better than they can. I still can remember driving with my grandmother and having her try to parallel park. And it was a horror story. Okay, it didn't turn out well. Okay? Hitting the curb, hitting the car behind, not good. So, next thing I want you to write down is vehicles, right? Why is this important? I would almost say that if we took a poll of everybody here in class, that 3/4 of you probably have been practicing driving on a passenger vehicle. The rest of you would probably be in a pickup truck or an SUV, maybe 60-40. Okay. Wow, a lot of no's. Haven't seen a yes. Let me see if I can find a yes. Wow. Look at that. All no's. Good. Well, we got one yes. All right. So with vehicles, let's write this down. Okay, driving a passenger vehicle, if you look at the picture right here, driving a passenger vehicle is going to give you better sight lines. Looking outside windows and back windows, when you've got more visibility with glass, it's easier to drive. Now, why is it important to think about some of these other vehicles? So in your notes, I want you to write down, vehicles matter by weight, length, and width. Okay, so let's think about this. Why does length matter? Okay, getting into a parking space. Are you sticking out? Same thing with width. When you're parking between two cars, do you have enough spacing to take any parking spot that you want in a parking lot? Or should you be choosy and maybe park further away from where you're going so no one parks next to you and you have plenty of room, even if you're crowding a line? And the thing about weight is that the weight of your vehicle has a direct correlation on your stopping distance. You will find that when you drive a vehicle that is lighter and smaller, you have better control and you stop better. When you drive a larger vehicle, width and length and weight, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be challenged. Doesn't mean that you can't drive it. You're just going to have to adapt. And it takes a little bit longer. So let's take a look at some of the examples that people have given me over the years. Passenger vehicle, SUV, trucks. Now it could be pickup truck. It could be a delivery truck like UPS. Tractor trailers, we're talking about, the semis, the real long 100, it can be a double wide, which is close to 100 feet or 80 feet. Motorcycles, scooters, bikes, skateboards, rollerblades, and I want you to write down this in your notes. Anything with wheels has to be out on the roadway. So that's why I've included bikes, skateboarders, and rollerbladers. You're going to have to encounter and deal with these things with wheels at all times. And at any moment, someone can come off a skateboard. Someone can fall off rollerblades. So that's dangerous to get too close to those vehicles. And the last thing that makes up the HTS is roadways. The biggest thing with roadways, what I want you to write down, is traction. So the first two, going from dirt to paved roads in a rural area, the biggest difference is lack of traction. The minute you leave a roadway to go onto a dirt road, your stopping distance will not be the same. It's always going to be longer. It's always going to be more difficult. Driving in the city, more cars, more traffic lights, more signs, which means more decision making, more reasoning. It's going to be more difficult. Same thing with a highway. Higher speeds, more volume of vehicles. It's going to be a little bit more difficult and challenging as a driver. But the nice thing about living in New Hampshire is that we can encounter a big city like Boston, which is only roughly an hour away, or we could go an hour north and be up in Conway, up around the mountains, or we could go up the coast, up past Portsmouth, up towards Portland, and be on Route 1 on a coastal road. So we get a good variety of roadways to practice on, which will serve you well if you have to move to another part of the country. My nephew grew up in Nebraska, and the funny thing is I went out to visit. They only had one traffic light in the whole town. One traffic light, 2 grocery stores. They had a Subway. I don't even know if they had another chain. But, okay, he was petrified when he came to visit out here to New Hampshire to drive around. There was just too many cars, too many things going on. So a lot has to do with where you're learning to drive, how you're trying to challenge you. So I hope that when you drive with your parents, you do not drive in the same place all the time. Go places that are different, that you don't know about, that's going to hopefully make you a better driver. Like we said earlier tonight, is what would happen if we didn't have any laws. So what I want you to write down, that the HTS is regulated by 3 branches of government, the federal, state, and local. We have court systems on each level. We have police, state police, local police. We have federal agents, FBI. But a lot of people say, well, why would the FBI have anything to do with me driving? Let me tell you, if you ever get involved with illegal drugs or having firearms in your vehicle, and you go from one state to another, and you're breaking a law when it comes to guns or illegal drugs, that is a federal crime. Now, you're doing that in your vehicle, so that's going to have some direct correlation to what you're doing in your car. So it's just not traffic laws that you have to be worried about right now. You've got to think about the activity that you're involving yourself in while you're driving a vehicle. Remember, the worst thing that could happen to you too would be vehicular homicide. You could spend the rest of your life in jail because of something that you did in your car where you killed someone. So learning to drive is a big responsibility. There's some bad stuff that can happen. So we've got to make sure that we understand law, we understand rules, and we follow those rules. Now, the 3 acts that I've got here, that was just part of, or the 2 acts here, was just part of the reading in the textbook, and I'm not going to get into that too much. Just know there's a lot of time and effort going into making our roads safer, and we're going to see that in in a little bit. And this is basically just an outline of what those acts were. Just making sure that we have safe vehicles. So we're always looking at building safer cars, whether it be shatterproof windows, increasing the amount of airbags that we've got in our car, increasing penalties for drunk driving, penalties for distracted driving. These are all things that go from federal, state, and local, so just be familiar with that. The thing about roadways, though, I want to talk about road design. Oh, here's some facts. I don't want you to write these down because they change constantly, but I just wanted you to understand that they're probably a little bit more real than what you thought. If I was to ask you at the beginning of driver's ed, what did you think the likelihood that you'd probably be in a crash a year from now? And you go, I probably won't. But 1 out of 9, that's like 10%. That's pretty high. That's pretty high. In a given year, your chance of surviving a disabling injury is about 1 in 83. Motor vehicle crashes kill about 38% of all people between the ages of 15 and 20. Okay, because you guys are risk takers, and that's going to be an issue, a problem. And this is probably the one that really got to me when I read it, was 57% of all fatal crashes for young people really involve just one vehicle. And what this tells me is that it wasn't because it was a bad road. It wasn't that it was weather. It was that you're a bad driver. A lot of the reasons why people die is lack of skill and judgment. If you had better skill, better judgment, then we wouldn't be losing as many people we do out on our roadways. Let's take a look, and I think this is the roadways. One of the things we try to do is always plan for the future. Like we already saw a video earlier today about making cars futuristic, where they're really doing a lot of the decision making for you. You still have to be in it and do some type of work, but not as much as you're going to have to do in the future. Well, the same thing with road design. We've got to think about what the roads are going to look like 30 years from now. So this is in another country, and I forgot to, it looks like in Myanmar, wherever that is, formerly called Burma, it says, all right, from the country formerly known as Burma. There are actually 10 lanes going in the same direction. So that's a 20-lane roadway. They thought this area was going to be influxed with people. So they said, we've got to build a roadway to handle all the cars and all the people they're going to be using. Well, guess what? Never happened. And if you look way up in the picture, it is so quiet. It's probably almost like the roadways now that we're all quarantined in our house, that there are people crossing these roads. And this is not a type of road that you should be crossing. It's probably not too safe. Okay? So let's take a look at how we're going to try to make our roads safer. This is what happened. This is back from, I believe, this is old. This is going to be 25, 30 years ago. But I kind of like when it talks about guardrails, telephone poles, bridges, about how roads can put you in a bad situation. So I want you to take away from this that sometimes the roads, the way that they were built, were not built the best, and we've got to update them because it puts us in harm's way. So while you're watching this video, now I'm going to get out of this for a second and come back to me. So what I want you to do, this is not where you're texting it on the YouTube. You're texting this to me while you're watching this. I want you to text to me an area that you think is unsafe to drive, that you've driven in. It could be in Madbury, could be in Durham, could be in Dover. You don't have to be the driver. You could have been a passenger and said, oh, this road, if you can't remember the name, just tell me the town and just explain why you think it's unsafe. So watch the video. They're going to show you situations that aren't safe.
Standing at the site of a fatal accident.
This tree is going to be struck again and again and again. pole has obvious signs of vehicle impact.
We're at the location of a serious accident.
Driver lost control of the vehicle.
Mother and two small children.
Wrapped around this utility pole.
Left-hand guardrail that will steer a car.
Outdated as of 25 years ago.
Ridge columns right along the edge of the roadway on both sides.
Highway safety ought to be a priority.
The tendency is to put back what was there.
As a highway engineer, you should do anything you can to reduce the severity of an accident.
This location may seem harmless to drivers that use it every day, when in fact it can be deadly and is loaded with roadside hazards. For example, the large tree located just inches off the edge of the pavement. The utility pole on the outside of the curve. Moving down the road a bit, an unprotected guardrail end, which when struck can be deadly and penetrate into vehicles that lose control and come into contact with it. And over here is another large tree located just about 1.5 feet off the edge of the pavement, and in fact was the site of a fatal crash just last year.
Each year in the United States, we have a large number of deaths and serious injuries resulting from single vehicle crashes into roadside obstacles or roadside hazards. This has been a problem that's been with us for a long time, and it continues to be one of the leading causes of death and serious injury in this country.
Before about 1965, or around that period of time, the highway engineering profession's primary mission was to make a safe roadway. There was also the feeling that once you got off that roadway, you're on your own. It's up to you to get out of the perilous situation. It's their job to provide a good roadway and your job to stay on it. About in the late 60s, the philosophy changed to, if a vehicle goes off the roadway, as a highway engineer, you should do anything you can possible to either get them back on the roadway or reduce the severity of an accident.
We learned a lot in the early days of the interstate system, how to make these roadside features less hazardous. And so today, the modern interstate system exemplifies the designs that eliminate most serious roadside hazards. And since we've built many miles of interstate system in the United States, the problem has shifted somewhat. But we still have a very serious problem on the many miles of secondary road that are still out there.
The most dangerous roads we have now are our rural secondary roads. They have the highest fatality rates. There's where you have very little opportunity to recover if you run off the road.
Almost half of all serious roadside hazard crashes occur on curves. Curves to the left are especially hazardous. Signs and pavement markings can help guide drivers around curves, but even where curves are well delineated, drivers can still lose control. And putting signs on roadside hazards isn't the answer. We need to do a lot more than that.
One of the major fixed objects along our roadsides, and the one that accounts for probably more fatalities than any other single fixed object, are trees.
This is an example of the most common problem in the area of roadside hazards, which is trees near the edge of the pavement, especially on curves. On this curve, there are trees right up against the edge of the pavement, and compounding the problem here is a complete lack of protection against drivers striking the trees. The trees are directly in line with any vehicle that loses control around that curve. After trees, utility poles are the most frequently struck object in fatal roadside hazard crashes. Every year in the United States, over 1,000 people die in crashes with utility poles. On this pole, you can see the marking and the scarring that's obvious. This pole has been hit many times and is located in a way that will guarantee it will be hit again in the future if it stays here. The way to deal with this problem is also obvious. Utility poles can be set much further back away from the road, creating a clear zone. Utility lines can be buried underground, eliminating the use of poles altogether. And the use of breakaway utility poles is an option. It's appropriate to remove isolated trees that are located in dangerous locations. However, trees and poles are often located in groups, and when this is the case, it's often more appropriate to shield those objects through the use of a safety barrier.
Guardrails are the most widely used type of safety barrier, but they're not used often enough to keep cars away from trees and poles. They're very effective, but if guardrails aren't installed properly, they can become hazards in their own right. One problem can be that while they're keeping cars away from one obstacle, they can direct them right into another.
This guardrail has been placed in such a way that while it provides adequate protection in some areas, it actually leads vehicles directly into the base of a very large tree, which is very dangerous. The way to correct the situation is to extend the guardrail past all objects on the side of the road and only end or terminate once there's a safe place to do so.
We have here a guardrail that's supposed to be protecting you against the bridge rail, but in actuality it runs you right into the bridge rail if you hit the guardrail. And as we can see, that bridge rail has been hit many, many times. The proper design is to have the guardrail out in front of this bridge rail and attached to it, such that you have a smooth transition from one to the other.
Another problem is the end of the guardrail itself, which can become a hazard if it isn't installed properly.
We're at the location of a serious accident with a mother and two small children that went off the left side of the roadway and hit this guardrail. This end treatment, which is like a knife edge, will impale a car, and that's what happened in this accident. The car hit the end of the guardrail, and it actually went up through the firewall into the passenger compartment of this car between two small children. This kind of guardrail is outdated as of 25 years ago, but still there's a lot of these around the country, thousands and thousands of them. Most modern guardrails have a type of end treatment that prevents the impalement of a car.
Burying the end of a guardrail can prevent impalement, but it's not the best answer because it can create a different hazard.
The solution to this problem is to make the post breakaway and make it essentially an energy attenuator.
This is one of the worst examples of roadside hazards that we've seen. Bridge piers like this one are often located very close to the edge of the pavement. They're especially deadly because of their large size and unyielding nature. At this site, a 36-year-old father of two small children died when his car veered off the road and struck an exposed bridge pier. We don't have to wait for somebody to die at a site like this to improve it. What we had at the site before was an exposed bridge pier that was extremely dangerous. Any vehicle running off the road coming into contact with that area of the bridge could result in devastating injuries. In place now is a properly designed guardrail that's attached to the exterior of the bridge pier. Along with that guardrail is a proper and safe end treatment that allows for a gradual deceleration of vehicles that run off the road.
Where bridge supports and other rigid structures can't be safely separated from traffic with guardrails, an alternative is energy-absorbing devices. Crash cushions and other devices can do an effective job of slowing vehicles down gradually. These concepts are simple. Wherever possible, provide a clear roadside that allows drivers a chance to regain control if they leave the road. If a clear zone isn't possible, make sure posts are designed to break away in a crash. And any remaining hazards should be separated from traffic by properly installed guardrails or other energy-absorbing barriers.
We at the federal level ran a highway safety improvement program. Under that program, we provided funds to the states to improve high accident locations. That turned out to be a very effective program.
Fixing roadside hazards is important because it can prevent a momentary loss of control or a minor crash from becoming serious or life-threatening. Engineering safer roads must become an even more important part of the national strategy to reduce deaths and injuries, now that speed limits and travel speeds have increased.
There are funds available for renovating and improving highways. It's very important that some of those funds be allocated to fixing the roadside hazard problem. Obviously, we can't fix them all at once. Therefore, it's very important for highway departments to have sensible priority schemes so that they can decide which ones they should fix first.
Roads are built by civil engineers, and civil engineers are civil servants, and they tend to do what the public wants. The only way you can get the state and local government to enhance safety on the roadway systems is for the public to want that enhanced safety. And I think they do.
Next time you're out on a country road, take a closer look. If you see hazards that shouldn't be there, especially on curves where loss of control is most common, ask yourself why. The answer is that for too long, solving this problem hasn't been a high enough priority. Raise the priority and help make safer roads.
Okay, hopefully this will change your point of view when you get out on the road next time with your parents. You're going to look at curves and telephone poles and guardrails a little bit different. It made me wonder when I first saw this video is that people go to college to be engineers. We've got road maintenance crews. Is that why didn't they know this when they developed these guardrails and telephone poles, that they were going to encounter these type of problems? But that's the problem, is we try to act out of good faith and implement these things, and then we find out, well, people are having issues with it. We've got to be able to adapt and change it. Now, I want you to write down, you probably saw this in the video. You probably saw that sign, okay, with the black arrow on yellow. The name of that sign is called a chevron sign. I want you to write that down. Now, the thing about a chevron sign is that the thicker the black arrow, the sharper the turn. Now, most of the time during the day, we can actually see where the road is going. Okay, in your notes, the chevron sign is basically to help people in bad weather or night driving, so you get to see it a little bit earlier. The problem that you're going to find, I'm getting kind of faded here. Let's just change the backdrop here. There we go. It's not much better. And also in some states, that the more signs that you have, the sharper the turn. So if you've got 3 signs, the next turn has 4. The one with 4 is a sharper turn. So that's just something that you should, put into practice next time that you drive. Now, you came up with a lot of good examples of where it's not safe. Some of you are kind of vague. I saw someone said that they thought Somersworth was kind of suspicious. I kind of laughed when I read that because I live the next town over. I do a lot of driving in Somersworth. I would tend to agree with you, but I would like to see specifics on that. What particular road or what area that you're driving in. But this is just north of Rochester. When you take a look at that picture, what stands out? If that telephone pole in the middle of your lane doesn't stand out, and you're encountering this as a driver, you're going to have your first crash. If you're not paying attention to driving, you're going to find situations that just make you scratch your head and go, who thought this one out? Okay? There is no way that telephone pole should be in that position. And the funny thing is there's a telephone pole just to the right of it. And if you take a look at that telephone pole to the right, there's a wire. There's a support wire. So it's not only unsafe for drivers, but it's unsafe for pedestrians or even for young kids that think that they should ride their bike on the sidewalk, that they're going to have real issues because they're not going to see it. They're not going to know that it's there. Here it is from a different point of view. Here you can see the support wire just a little bit better. But that telephone pole shouldn't be there. And actually, it's not there anymore. Enough people from the town complained about it, so we don't have it there. This was a video. I wasn't able to find the source of it, so I can't actually show it to you. But this was taken from a newscast that in China, I believe this road goes towards Beijing, traffic was a 9-day traffic jam. Now, when they mean 9-day, they mean that you were in your vehicle and you could not move it. You could not go anywhere. You stayed in your vehicle for 9 days. That's incredible. Okay. I want you to write down a few notes here about risk. So I want you to write down risk is defined as the chance of injury to yourself or others and the chance of damage to your vehicle or property. And it's more probable than you think. Most of us get out on the roadway and we never really think anything's going to happen to us. And this is another reason why a lot of people don't wear seatbelts, because they think, oh, I'm a good driver. Nothing's going to happen to me. But reality, at some point in your life, you're going to have probably a crash. Whether you're the cause of it or someone hits you, you're going to be in a vehicle that is hitting something. So risk is the chance of injury to yourself or others and the chance of damage to your vehicle or property. So make sure you have that down. Another nice thing about these videos is that if I go too fast, you can put it in a comment telling me, you know, Mr. Tolkien, slow it down a little bit. But you can always go back and just kind of, you know, skim along until you find a section that we went over, because a lot of these notes will be on your midterm and your final. It's just not from your reading in the state manual or the textbook. It's from these PowerPoints. We had dangerous and vulnerable last night. So to reduce your risk, keep your vehicle in top condition. Anticipate the actions of others. Protect yourself and others. That means by being in good, sound driving condition. Make a conscious effort to develop your driving skills so you're always trying to get better at doing something. Just because you're not good at parallel parking, it shouldn't be that you just give up on it. You should just keep on practicing, keep on going at it until you actually have that skill down. Don't let it get the best of you. So I do want you to write this down. What are the foundations for effective driving? First one is searching and meaning to what you see ahead of you. We're going to actually go through rules of the road first and then get to, using your eyes. But I will tell you right now, people that do not see well do not drive well. You cannot have blurry vision and drive well. There are going to be things that you just don't see, you can't focus on. Second thing, understand options and choices. And lastly, mastering basic driving skills. When we do go out to drive, let me tell you the things that we're going to be practicing driving. So maybe you've done some of these things with your parents. Maybe they're waiting for, your parents are waiting for me to take you out. Backing out of a driveway, angle parking, lane changes, perpendicular parking, parallel parking, traffic circles, merging onto a highway, backing into perpendicular parking spots. All these different driving skills we're going to be working on to make sure that when you go for your license, that you're not going to have any problems. The thing about going for your driver's license, whether it be in New Hampshire or in another state, because it's in every state, some type of a driving skill to get a license, a lot of times you don't know what they're going to ask you to do, so you've got to be ready for whatever they throw your way. Now, in some states, they make it mandatory. You have to do like a hill stop and then go forward, or a three-point turn, or parallel parking. Some states actually have it where you only have certain things that you're going to go over. But in New Hampshire, they have 3 or 4 different routes, and we'll talk more about this. And they can ask you to do anything, okay? They can ask you to do anything. Well, of course, it has to be legal, but there's no way that you're going to be able to just practice a route and be able to get it. Don't write down the definitions. Just write down visibility, time, and space. We'll be getting into this a little bit more on another day. But visibility is what you see from behind the wheel, the steering wheel, how well you can see it. We just talked about how important your eyes are. Time, the ability to judge your speed and the speed of other vehicles and highway users, and space, the distance around your vehicle. I will tell you this, that when people tell me they've done 20 hours or more with their parents, and I get you out in the car for the first time, I can always tell the parents that really did a good job, because those students check their mirrors more frequently and use their side mirrors more than those that have done less than 20 hours. The big thing for me is I can tell within 10 minutes really probably how much driving you've done. In 10 minutes, I can tell. The way you accelerate, brake, steer, check your mirrors, 10 minutes, I can probably guess. So when you go for your driving test, don't think that you're going to fool them. They're looking, there are certain things they can make you do that will show that someone is prepared and ready and they have the necessary skills to be a licensed driver. Not going to do that, the questions. Let's go through the top 11 driving errors. Don't have to write these down, but I just want to kind of cover them. Not attending to your path of travel. What that means is being centered in your lane. One of the big pet peeves for your license test is your speed and position. So I guess you should write this down. So there are a few things I want you to write down. I forgot this was here. We didn't cover it yesterday, and I usually do. Most parents sometimes will ask me, what is my philosophy on going the speed limit? Okay, so here it is. I want you to write it down. I understand you're learning to drive. I do not expect you to be perfect, but I do expect you to be trying to do your best. So will I let you go above the speed limit at times? Yes. Will I let you go below the speed limit at times? Yes. So I'm going to give you that 5-mile cushion. So if it's 35 and you're going 38, 39, it's a nice day like today, there's nobody in front of you, I probably won't say anything. Same thing, if it's 35, you're going 32, you're comfortable with 32, there's nobody behind us, I'll let you go 32. But if traffic is heavy, if weather is bad, you should be pretty darn close to the speed limit, especially for your driving test. But because the way roads are built, because you're going up a hill or down a hill, you're going to be picking up more speed than you need, or you're going to have to get up to speed because you're going up a hill and you're just not used to a car, so you're going to go slow at times. I understand that. But a good driver is going to be pretty darn perfect with their speed, just a little bit above or a little bit below. I'm not going to let you go 8, 10 miles over the speed limit on a regular basis. If you're going down a hill and we hit 8 or 10, as long as we're going to fix it, I'm going to be okay with that momentarily. But I'm not going to let you go 40 and a 30 for 20 minutes. It's just not going to happen. The other thing you've got to remember is I do have an instructor brake. So if I use the instructor brake, that means you're not doing your job. So make sure that you're going the speed limit and I don't have to make you go the speed limit. Sometimes people go too fast through a turn. Inadequate search at an intersection or failing to yield to crossing traffic. Lack of attention at an intersection and being struck by another vehicle. Of course that's going to be a problem. That's a big error. Improper evasive action. Quick turn not executed properly. Failure to maintain visual lead, which means that I may ask you, what's the next sign up ahead? And you have no clue where it is. Failure to see action developing at the side of the roadway. Okay, I want you to slow down for that pedestrian. What pedestrian? How come I'm seeing it and you're not? Okay, you've got to see these things that are happening. Now, I'm going to be your set of eyes, just like your parents are right now. But at some point, remember, you're going to be a licensed driver with nobody in the car helping you out, picking things up. You've got to do that on your own. Following too closely. Got to be back at least 3 to 4 seconds. Don't want to be any closer than that. Willfully taking right away from somebody. Okay, this is a big one. You've got to understand traffic law. Who has the right of way? Who gets to go first? Who gets to go second? Who goes third? So when you're dealing with 4 roadways coming into an intersection. And then this is a big one. This could probably be number 1, even though they weren't numbered, is being a distracted driver. And we saw that yesterday. More and more people are trying to multitask when they're in the car. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Now, the last thing that I did not show you, we're not going to see this one. We're going to see this probably tomorrow. The last thing that I forgot to show you is that technology, when we're talking about in a car, there's also technology outside of the vehicle that is with roadways. I don't know if any of you have seen the original, or not the original, but the Italian Job. I love that movie. Okay, I love that movie. And there's a part in that movie where they go on and they control the traffic light system. And I want you to understand that is not just the movies, that is real life. They actually have in metropolitan areas now a command center which is controlling a traffic flow so we can get the highest volume of traffic through a particular area during the day. So I want to show you this last video and then we'll wrap things up.
Is out in traffic with a look at way care and how it's changing our roadways. Melissa?
Good evening. Well, just before 5:15 right now, and as you can expect, we're turning onto 275, and if you're looking ahead for us, you're going to see that there's traffic straight ahead as soon as we get on that highway. Of course, this is expected, but get this, soon enough, our city is hoping to make rush hour just a regular hour. That means that we could be driving without, as we are right now, getting constantly stuck in traffic.
Traffic is nothing new in Tampa, but it's never welcome.
These two incidents just popped up.
Now, accidents and lane closures don't need to slow us down, at least not for too long.
Our city is a laboratory for good ideas. We're trying out different tools to improve services.
The city of Tampa is trying Waycare, a pilot program analyzing traffic information via cameras, sensors, and nearby apps on your phone, like Waze, to relay real-time information to the city, like earlier today for an accident at Bush and 275.
And as soon as we saw that, we identified it with the platform, verified it with the camera. We then moved to our traffic signal system and made timing changes.
Rerouting traffic as responders arrived.
You can go ahead and make changes as needed to mitigate the impacts of the congestion.
3 months into the Palo Alto platform, and the city hopes to eventually predict delays, diverting traffic before it even happens.
The more it learns, the better that algorithm gets.
And back out here live, finally getting onto 275, and you can see that we're just about to be stuck in traffic for quite some time. Now, that prediction phase is far off into the future, but the good news is, as it stands, Tampa's traffic model could be used as an example for other cities to come. For right now, I'm Melissa Mahadeo, ABC Action News.
So that should give you a different perspective of the highway transportation system. Just how technology is playing a major part in making our roads safer, making our vehicles safer, so we don't have breakdowns, so we can get to where we want to go a lot safer. I'm going to put up on the board one last time, so let me just kind of put something up here. So remember, you're going to Facebook because you've got to do that pre-test. So you're going on Toll Driving School, and then you're scrolling down to where there's a post, and you're joining your private driver's education class, and then you're taking this quiz, okay? And remember from yesterday, whoop, wrong side. Let me get out of this. The password for the quiz is spring. Whoop. There we go. Spring. That's the password for the quiz. Now for homework, if you take a look at the syllabus, it says read chapter 4 and 5. I do not want you to read chapter 5 right now. Okay, so just do chapter 4. Read it and do the questions like you were doing. And remember, you're going to do the chapter questions and you're going to send to me. So sometimes you're going to have things on your phone to send to me. Sometimes you're going to go to Facebook and you're going to log into a link, and then that's going to be emailed to me when you take your test score. Okay? So that is for homework. Tomorrow's class is going to be on knowing your vehicle. So the last thing that I want you to do is to bring a car manual to class. So in the glove compartment of your vehicle, get the car manual and maintenance manual. Bring it to your computer So we're going to be dealing with the controls of your car. We're also going to talk about what your homework's going to be, and you're going to have to use your car manual. So if you bring it into class, we'll be able to discuss it a little bit about how to fill out the worksheet. And the worksheet is going to be on the Facebook page. So remember, if you go to the Facebook page, you're going to be able to download the manual, take the quiz, and get these worksheets. So you got to do that. Now, the last thing is signing out. Okay, we're gonna sign off in the next 15 seconds. Okay, I'm signing out. That's what I want you to write down so I know that when you came in and when you left. If I find, right now I'm looking at my clock, 9:15, that's really when I usually want to end. Okay, I want to see people logging out in the next 2-3 minutes, because if you're doing it later, then you weren't here watching. Because right now I see the numbers are growing rather than back about 2-3 minutes ago we were down to 15 eyeballs. So remember, I'm watching. I may not know who you are, but I know there are some people in class that aren't doing well and paying attention. So see you tomorrow. Have a good night, and good luck on the quiz. Do the quiz. See you tomorrow.